Jennifer Brooke looked up from her patient coordination display. So they created the plague, released it on Vection to test our medical response, then spied on our treatment methods? That appears to be the case, Marcus confirmed. They turned genocide into a research project. The moral implications were staggering. The hegemony had deliberately infected an entire planet with a lethal plague, knowing that human medical teams would respond to help the dying population. They had weaponized humanity's compassion, turning their greatest strength into a vulnerability to be exploited. Admiral Cross's response was characteristically direct. The hegemony Commonwealth received a formal communication that was broadcast on all galactic frequencies, ensuring that every species would hear humanity's position clearly. The hegemony Commonwealth has used humanitarian crises to conduct intelligence operations against human medical personnel, Cross announced. This constitutes a violation of the medical accords and a hostile act against Earth. Any further surveillance of human medical operations will result in immediate retaliation. The message was accompanied by detailed evidence of the hegemony's spy network and their role in creating the Vection plague. The galactic community watched in shock as the scope of the hegemony's manipulation became clear. Within days, the hegemony Commonwealth found themselves diplomatically isolated. Species that had once been allies distanced themselves from a government that would create plagues to test foreign medical capabilities. Trade agreements were suspended, defense pacts were reconsidered, and the hegemony's expansion plans ground to a halt. On Vection, the human medical teams completed their work. The cure they developed was distributed freely to the dying population, and within weeks, the plague was contained. But the cost of the hegemony's manipulation was measured in millions of Vection lives that could have been saved if treatment had begun earlier. Dr. Vale stood in the same observation deck where he had begun this mission, watching the last medical shuttles return to the sanctuary. The red crosses on their hulls gleamed in the light of Vection's twin suns, symbols of hope that had been tainted by political manipulation. "Will we continue medical operations in hegemony territory?" Jennifer Brooke asked. Marcus considered the question carefully. "We'll help anyone who needs medical assistance," he said finally. "But we'll do it with full military escort and complete transparency. The galaxy needs to understand that human compassion is not weakness to be exploited." The Vection crisis had taught the galaxy another lesson about humanity's true nature. They would still provide medical assistance to any species that needed it, but they would no longer allow their humanitarian missions to be turned into intelligence-gathering operations. The Red Cross remained a symbol of healing, but it was now protected by forces that would not hesitate to retaliate against those who would exploit human kindness. The hegemony Commonwealth had learned, like the Crimson Talon before them, that there was a price to pay for betraying those who chose to heal rather than harm. The Iron Covenant 1 year after the Vection Plague crisis, the Galactic Council convened its most significant session in 3 centuries. The massive assembly hall on Nexus Prime buzzed with tension as representatives from every major species gathered to address what had become known as the human question. The species that had once been dismissed as gentle healers now commanded fear and respect that reshaped galactic politics. Ambassador Vextar of the Hegemony Commonwealth stood at the central podium, his 4 compound eyes reflecting the strain of his species' diplomatic isolation. The destruction of their spy networks and the exposure of their role in the Vection plague had cost them dearly. Former allies had abandoned trade agreements, and their territorial expansion had ground to a complete halt. "Honored delegates," Vextar began, his translator rendering his clicks and chittering into galactic standard. "We must address the growing concern about human military capabilities. Their retaliation protocols have fundamentally altered the balance of power in our galaxy." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Representatives from dozens of species nodded their various appendages, tentacles, and heads. The humans had demonstrated military might that exceeded even the most generous estimates, and their willingness to use it had created uncertainty throughout established power structures. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's chief representative to the Galactic Council, sat quietly in the human delegation section. Her medical uniform bore the Red Cross that had become the most recognized symbol in the galaxy, representing both unlimited compassion and absolute protection. Beside her sat Admiral Catherine Cross, whose presence at a diplomatic gathering spoke volumes about humanity's changed approach to galactic relations. The humans claim to be healers, continued Ambassador Zexmar of the Crystalline Collective, yet they possess warships capable of destroying entire fleets in minutes. How do we reconcile these contradictions? The question struck at the heart of galactic concerns. Every species had built their understanding of humanity around their medical missions and peaceful nature. The revelation of Earth's true military capabilities had shattered those assumptions, leaving alien governments scrambling to reassess their strategic positions. Admiral Cross rose from her seat with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to command. The assembly fell silent as she approached the podium, her gray eyes scanning the thousands of alien faces that watched her with mixtures of fear, curiosity, and respect. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. You ask how we reconcile our nature as healers with our capabilities as warriors. The answer is simple. We chose to heal because we understood the cost of war. She paused, allowing her words to settle. For centuries, humanity has possessed the technology and military capacity you witnessed. We have always had the ability to conquer, subjugate, and dominate. We chose not to because we understood that true strength lies in restraint, and true power lies in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The assembly stirred uneasily. The implications were staggering. Humanity had been capable of galactic conquest for centuries, but had deliberately chosen the path of healers and peacekeepers instead. Dr. Vasquez joined Admiral Cross at the podium, her medical scanner glowing softly as she consulted data from 17 different star systems. In the past year, human medical teams have treated over 4 million patients across the galaxy. We have developed cures for 7 previously incurable diseases. We have prevented 3 planetary plagues and saved countless lives. Her voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had dedicated her life to preserving others. This is what we choose to do with our capabilities. We choose to heal rather than harm, to protect rather than conquer, to save lives rather than take them. Ambassador Morthak of the Void Runners, a species known for their aggressive expansion, leaned forward in his seat. But you demonstrated on Korath Prime and against the hegemony that you will use military force when your medical personnel are threatened. Correct, Admiral Cross replied without hesitation. We will protect our medics with overwhelming force, because they represent our highest values. Attack our healers and you attack the very essence of what humanity strives to be. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates conferred with their advisors. The human position was clear but unprecedented. They claimed the right to provide medical assistance anywhere in the galaxy, backed by military force sufficient to protect their personnel against any threat. Chancellor Brixtos of the Medical Council rose from his seat, his tentacles writhing with nervous energy. The humans are proposing a fundamental change to galactic law. They want absolute protection for medical personnel, enforced by military retaliation. No, Dr. Vasquez corrected firmly. We're not proposing anything new. The medical accords already guarantee protection for medical personnel. We're simply ensuring that those protections are enforced. She activated a holographic display showing medical missions across the galaxy. Red crosses marked human operations on dozens of worlds, each one surrounded by discreet but visible military escorts. We continue our healing missions as we always have, but now everyone understands the consequences of attacking our medics. The display shifted to show casualty statistics from the past year. Where human medical teams operated, civilian casualties in war zones had decreased by over 60%. Refugee camps with human medical support reported mortality rates nearly 90% lower than those without human assistance. Our presence saves lives, Dr. Vasquez continued. But our ability to save lives depends on our medics being safe from attack. The military protection we provide ensures that we can continue our humanitarian missions. Ambassador Korthax of the Sigma Confederation stood to address the assembly. What happens when human interests conflict with local sovereignty? You claim to be healers, but you deploy warships that could conquer entire star systems. Admiral, Cross's expression hardened. We have no interest in conquest or territorial expansion. Our only concern is protecting our medical personnel and ensuring they can continue their work. Any species that respects the medical accords has nothing to fear from human military forces. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed the debris fields where the Crimson Talon faction and hegemony spy networks had been destroyed. But those who attack our medics or exploit our humanitarian missions for military intelligence will face immediate and absolute retaliation. The message was unmistakable. Humanity would continue its medical missions throughout the galaxy, but those missions were now backed by military force sufficient to deter any potential threats. The gentle healers had revealed themselves to be protected by warriors of unimaginable capability. Dr. Timothy Nash, attending the session as part of the human medical delegation, activated his medical scanner and projected patient data from the Altair system. The Vexian plague we treated 6 months ago would have resulted in complete planetary extinction without human intervention. We developed the cure in 3 weeks and distributed it freely to the entire population. His voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had worked tirelessly to save alien lives. This is what we do. This is who we are. We heal because we can, and we protect our ability to heal because the galaxy needs us to. The admission was both humble and terrifying. Humanity was claiming to be indispensable to galactic health and safety, while possessing military capabilities that could enforce that claim against any opposition. Chancellor Morden of the Vexian Council, attending via holographic projection due to his world's ongoing recovery, addressed the assembly with obvious emotion. The humans saved my people from extinction. They asked for nothing in return except safe passage for their medical teams. When we discovered their operations were being spied upon, they eliminated the threat and continued their healing work. His 3 eyes blinked in sequence as he continued. We owe our species' survival to human medical expertise. But more than that, we learned that human compassion is backed by the strength to protect that compassion from those who would exploit it. The testimony carried weight throughout the assembly. Vexian was not the only species that owed its survival to human medical intervention. Across the galaxy, entire civilizations existed because human medics had chosen to help when no one else could or would. Ambassador Zexmar of the Crystalline Collective consulted with his advisors before addressing the assembly again. Are we to understand that humanity will enforce medical accord protections throughout the galaxy, regardless of local laws or sovereignty concerns? We will protect our medical personnel, Admiral Cross stated flatly. The medical accords are galactic, law ratified by every species in this assembly. We're not imposing new requirements. We're simply ensuring existing protections are respected. The distinction was crucial, but terrifying. Humanity was claiming the right to enforce galactic law through military action, using their medical missions as justification for military presence in any star system. Dr. Vasquez softened the implications with her next statement. We have no desire to interfere in local governance or territorial disputes. Our only goal is to provide medical assistance where it's needed, but we've learned that our medics must be protected if they're going to continue their work. She gestured to the casualty statistics still displayed in the chamber's center. The results speak for themselves. Human medical missions save lives on a scale that benefits every species represented in this assembly. Our military escorts ensure those missions can continue. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. Humanity had demonstrated both the capability and willingness to enforce medical accord protections through military action. The galaxy could accept this new reality or face the consequences of opposing it. When the final vote was tallied, the Galactic Council officially recognized what had become known as the Iron Covenant. Human medical personnel would be granted absolute protection throughout the galaxy, backed by military force sufficient to deter any potential threats. In exchange, humanity committed to providing medical assistance to any species that requested it, regardless of political considerations or territorial disputes. The Red Cross had become more than a symbol of healing. It had become a guarantee of safety backed by the most devastating military force the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human medics would continue their work as healers and protectors of life, but now everyone understood that attacking them meant facing humanity's capacity for absolute destruction. As the assembly dispersed, delegates from hundreds of species carried the same message back to their homeworlds. The humans remained committed to healing and helping others, but they would protect their medics with overwhelming force. The species that had chosen compassion over conquest had proven that their choice was backed by the strength to enforce it. Dr. Elena Vasquez remained at the podium as the chamber emptied, her medical scanner showing requests for assistance from 43 different star systems. The Iron Covenant had been ratified, but the real work of healing the galaxy's wounds was just beginning. The Red Cross would continue to mean mercy, compassion, and healing. But now it also meant absolute protection for those who chose to save lives rather than take them. The eternal vigil 5 years after the Iron Covenant was ratified, Dr. Marcus Vale stood once again on the observation deck of the hospital ship Sanctuary. The view before him was vastly different from that first mission to Korath Prime. Human medical ships now operated in over 200 star systems, their Red Crosses accompanied by discreet military escorts that had become as familiar as the healers themselves. The galaxy had adapted to the new reality. Medical personnel were treated with reverence that bordered on worship, protected by laws that every species enforced with religious dedication. The Red Cross had become the most respected symbol in known space, representing not just healing, but the absolute guarantee of safety for those who chose to save lives. Dr. Vale called Communications Officer Lisa Chang from her station, her voice carrying satisfaction, earned through years of successful missions. "We're receiving a priority message from the Terran Medical Command. They want to congratulate us on reaching our 5th anniversary without a single attack on human medical personnel." Marcus smiled, an expression that had become more common over the years. The fear that had driven him after Korath Prime had evolved into quiet confidence. Human medics could now work in the most dangerous war zones without concern for their safety, protected by the certain knowledge that any attack would bring swift and absolute retaliation. Nurse Captain Jennifer Brooke joined him at the observation window, her medical scanner showing patient statistics from their current mission to the Outer Rim. They were treating refugees from a territorial dispute between 2 minor species, providing humanitarian aid that had become routine thanks to the Iron Covenant's protections. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if the Crimson Talon had never attacked us," she mused, watching the medical shuttles moving between the sanctuary and the refugee camps below. "We'd still be doing the same work," Marcus replied. "But we'd be doing it afraid, always looking over our shoulders, always wondering if the next mission would be our last." The transformation had been profound. Human medical personnel had gone from being vulnerable healers dependent on the goodwill of warring factions to being the most protected individuals in the galaxy. The change had allowed them to expand their operations dramatically, reaching populations that had previously been too dangerous to assist. Dr. Timothy Nash emerged from the medical bay, his surgical scrubs bearing the faint stains of another successful operation. "The Corvani child with the genetic defect will make a full recovery," he reported. "Her parents are requesting permission to name their next offspring after our medical team." Such gestures had become common throughout the galaxy. Species that had once taken human medical assistance for granted now expressed gratitude that reflected their understanding of what they had nearly lost. The attack on Korath Prime had taught everyone the value of human healers by demonstrating the consequences of attacking them. In the depths of space, Admiral Catherine Cross reviewed fleet deployment reports from her flagship, the Dreadnought, Eternal Guardian. Her gray eyes, now showing the silver of advancing years, studied tactical displays that showed human medical operations across 200 star systems. Each Red Cross was accompanied by a discreet military presence, a reminder of humanity's commitment to protecting its healers. "Admiral," reported Commander Jackson Pierce, his own uniform now bearing the insignia of a decorated veteran. "We're receiving requests for medical assistance from the Andromedan sector. 3 species are involved in a complex territorial dispute, and civilian casualties are mounting." Cross nodded thoughtfully. 5 years ago, such a request would have required careful consideration of political implications and safety concerns. Now it was simply another opportunity for human medics to demonstrate their capabilities while protected by the Iron Covenant's guarantees. "Deploy Medical Fleet 7 with full escort," she ordered. "Standard humanitarian protocols. Make it clear to all parties that our medics are there to heal, not to take sides in their territorial disputes." The routine nature of the order reflected how completely the galaxy had accepted the new paradigm. Human medical teams could now operate anywhere, treating anyone who needed help, protected by military force that no species dared challenge. On the planet Korath Prime, now a thriving world rebuilt from the ashes of civil war, a memorial stood where the first human medics had been attacked 5 years earlier. The simple monument bore the names of the 12 medical personnel who had died in the Crimson Talon assault, their sacrifice having transformed galactic civilization in ways they could never have imagined. Chancellor Thoxmar, now the elected leader of the unified Zephyrian government, stood before the memorial with a delegation of galactic dignitaries. His blue-tinted skin showed the healthy glow of someone whose world had known peace for 5 years. A peace maintained partly by the understanding that attacking human medics meant facing humanity's terrible wrath. "This memorial represents more than the loss of brave healers," he addressed the assembled crowd. "It represents the moment when the galaxy learned the true value of those who choose to save lives rather than take them." The ceremony was broadcast throughout human space, watched by medical personnel who continued their work on hundreds of worlds. Dr. Vale and his team aboard the sanctuary paused in their duties to observe the moment of silence, remembering colleagues whose deaths had transformed their profession from vulnerable service to protected calling. In the advanced medical laboratories of Earth, researchers worked on treatments for diseases that affected dozens of different species. The Iron Covenant had not only protected human medics, but had also accelerated medical research by providing access to alien pathologies that had previously been too dangerous to study. Human medicine had advanced more in 5 years than in the previous 50, driven by the safety that allowed them to work in any environment. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Earth's leading xenobiologist, analyzed samples from the Andromedan crisis while her colleagues developed treatment protocols for species they had never encountered before. The combination of protected access and advanced research capabilities had made human medicine indispensable to galactic civilization. "We're seeing genetic markers that suggest artificial enhancement," she reported to the research team. "Someone may be using biological weapons in the Andromedan conflict." The implication sent a chill through the laboratory. Biological warfare had become even more serious since the Vection incident, when the Hegemony Commonwealth had created a plague to test human medical responses. Any species using such weapons now faced not just medical intervention, but potential military retaliation if human medics were endangered. Admiral Cross received Dr. Mitchell's report within hours, her expression hardening as she read the analysis. The Andromedan conflict was more complex than initial reports had suggested, involving not just territorial disputes, but potential war crimes through biological weapons deployment. "Commander Pierce," she called to her tactical officer, "increase the military escort for Medical Fleet 7. If someone is using biological weapons, our medics may face deliberate targeting." The precaution reflected lessons learned over 5 years of enforcing the Iron Covenant. Human medical personnel were now protected not just by law but by military doctrine that assumed any threat to medics was a threat to Earth itself. On the Andromedan frontier, Dr. Rachel Torres led the human medical team as they established field hospitals and refugee camps stretched across 3 different worlds. Her experience treating alien diseases had made her one of Earth's most valuable xenomedical specialists, but even she was shocked by the sophistication of the biological weapons being employed. "This isn't random disease," she reported to the sanctuary via encrypted communications. "Someone has engineered pathogens specifically designed to target Andromedan physiology. We're looking at attempted genocide through biological warfare." The accusation triggered immediate investigation by both medical and military personnel. If one of the Andromedan factions was using engineered diseases to eliminate their opponents, they were violating every civilized law of warfare while putting Human medics at risk through exposure to unknown pathogens. Dr. Nash, now serving as senior medical officer for the Andromedan mission, worked with his team to develop treatments for diseases that should not have existed in nature. Their portable laboratories hummed with activity as they raced to save lives while documenting evidence of war crimes. "We've isolated the pathogen," he reported after 72 hours of intensive research. "The genetic markers indicate hegemony, Commonwealth biotechnology, but modified beyond their original specifications." The discovery sent shockwaves through the galactic intelligence community. The hegemony, still diplomatically isolated after the Vexian incident, appeared to be selling biological weapons to species involved in territorial disputes. They were profiting from genocide while risking human medical personnel who would inevitably be called to treat the victims. Admiral Cross's response was swift and decisive. Human fleets materialized throughout hegemony space. Their weapons trained on every military installation and research facility. The message was transmitted on all frequencies, ensuring that every species in the galaxy would hear Earth's position. "The hegemony Commonwealth has supplied biological weapons used in the Andromedan conflict," Cross announced. "These weapons have put human medical personnel at risk while facilitating war crimes against civilian populations. This constitutes a direct violation of the Iron Covenant." The ultimatum that followed was simple and absolute. The hegemony would cease all biological weapons research, surrender their existing stockpiles for destruction, and submit to galactic oversight of their biotechnology programs. Failure to comply would result in the complete dismantling of their civilization. Within 6 hours, the hegemony Commonwealth capitulated completely. Their biological weapons facilities were open to human inspection, their research databases were surrendered, and their entire biotechnology program was placed under galactic supervision. The species that had once manipulated humanitarian crises for intelligence gathering had learned that challenging the Iron Covenant meant facing extinction. Dr. Vale watched the hegemony surrender from the observation deck of the sanctuary, his medical scanner showing improved patient statistics as effective treatments for the engineered diseases were distributed throughout the Andromedan sector. The crisis had been resolved not just through medical intervention, but through the demonstrated willingness to protect human medics at any cost. 5 years ago, we would have been helpless against biological weapons, Jennifer Brooke observed. We would have treated the victims while the perpetrators continued their crimes. Now we treat the victims and eliminate the threat, Marcus replied. The galaxy has learned that attacking our medics means facing our military, but it's also learned that threatening our medics through indirect means carries the same consequences. The Andromedan crisis ended within 2 months, resolved not through military conquest but through medical intervention, backed by overwhelming force. The engineered diseases were cured, the refugee populations were treated, and the territorial dispute was settled through galactic mediation rather than continued warfare. As the sanctuary prepared to depart the Andromedan sector, Dr. Vale received a message that had become routine over the past 5 years. Representatives from 17 different species requested permission to establish monuments honoring human medical personnel, recognizing their role in preventing what could have been a genocide through biological warfare. The Red Cross had evolved beyond a symbol of healing. It had become a guarantee that civilized behavior would be enforced throughout the galaxy, that war crimes would be punished, and that those who chose to save lives would be protected by forces capable of absolute destruction. Standing once again at the observation window, Dr. Vale watched the stars wheel slowly past as the sanctuary entered hyperspace for their next mission. Human medical ships were already responding to crises in 7 different sectors, their red crosses gleaming like beacons of hope in a galaxy that had learned to respect the sacred nature of healing. The attack on Korath Prime 5 years earlier had been intended to demonstrate that human mercy was weakness to be exploited. Instead, it had revealed that human compassion was strength to be protected, backed by the most devastating military force the galaxy had ever witnessed. The Crimson Talon faction had fired on human medics expecting easy victory. They had received instant retaliation that transformed galactic civilization. Now 5 years later, the Red Cross meant something that no symbol in galactic history had ever represented. Unlimited mercy backed by unlimited power, wielded by a species that had chosen to heal rather than harm, but possessed the strength to enforce that choice against any opposition. The eternal vigil continued, with human medics working throughout the galaxy under protection that guaranteed their safety, while they continued their ancient mission of preserving life wherever it was threatened. The galaxy had learned its lesson, but humanity's commitment to healing remained as strong as their commitment to protecting those who chose to heal.